I never thought I'd hear my own wife call me dead weight, but there I was standing just a few feet away, listening to Megan laugh with her family at my expense. He plays with his little company while I pay the bills. She joked, then she added, I'm basically married to a hobbyist. I'm tired of carrying him. The room erupted in laughter. They had no idea I was right there. Hearing every word, I felt a sharp sting in my chest, more painful than any argument we'd ever had. But I didn't say a thing. I just smiled, turned around, and left quietly. What Megan didn't know was that I was days away from finishing something that would change everything, not just for me, but for her too. 3 weeks later, she'd walk through our front door in a panic. And by then, the power dynamic in our marriage would never be the same. What would you do if the person who's supposed to believe in you mocked your dreams instead? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to Revenge with Chris for more stories like this. I wasn't always the guy people laughed at behind my back. When I first launched my tech startup 8 years ago, Megan was my biggest supporter. We were that couple who believed in chasing dreams, late nights, cheap takeout, and big plans for the future. But dreams, they take time. And as the years passed, reality set in. While I reinvested every dollar back into my company, Megan climbed the corporate ladder at a major marketing firm. Her promotions came with nice paychecks, steady, reliable. Soon she became the primary breadwinner. At first it didn't bother me. We were a team, right? She carried us financially while I built something bigger, something for both of us. But somewhere along the way, her support turned into subtle jabs. Little comments at dinner like, maybe you should start looking for a real job. Or, it must be nice working on passion projects while I handle the bills. I laughed them off. At first told myself she was just stressed, but deep down those words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. See, what Megan didn't understand was that my company wasn't failing. It was growing strategically, quietly. I had developed a proprietary AI algorithm designed to revolutionize targeted marketing. A few major players had already shown interest. I just needed more time to finalize it. But Megan wasn't interested in potential. She wanted results. She could see numbers in a bank account, not lines of code on a screen. The tension between us grew unspoken but heavy. Then came her family reunion. I didn't even want to go, but Megan insisted. It'll be good for you to socialize a bit, she said with a smirk, like I was some recluse who needed fresh air. So there I was, standing in her parents' backyard, surrounded by people who barely knew me, people who measured success by job titles and salaries. I tried to stay positive, mingling politely. But then I heard it, Megan's voice, laughing. Andrew's still playing with his little company. She told her cousins, I'm basically married to a hobbyist. I'm the one keeping us afloat. They laughed with her like it was some big joke, like I was some kid refusing to grow up. I stood there frozen, not angry, just hollow. It wasn't just the words, it was the realization that the person who once believed in me the most now saw me as a burden. I could have confronted her right then and there. But what was the point? No argument would change her mind. So I did the only thing I knew how to do. I walked away. Not from the marriage. Not yet. I left that reunion, drove straight to my office, and locked in on my project like my life depended on it. Because in a way, it did. I wasn't working just to prove Megan wrong. I was working to prove to myself that all those years of sacrifice meant something, that I wasn't wasting my time, or hers. And deep down I knew, if this deal went through, everything would change. She'd see exactly who she was married to. The days after that reunion felt different. Something inside me had shifted. Megan acted like nothing happened, like she hadn't just humiliated me in front of her entire family. She smiled, asked about my day, and carried on with her usual routine, but I couldn't unhear her words. Dead weight, hobbyist. I buried myself in work, determined to finish my algorithm. Sleep became optional. Every waking moment was about perfecting the code, finalizing the pitch, and locking down the deal. Then one evening, about a week later, Megan dropped another bomb. I was sitting at the kitchen table, laptop, open, reviewing data, when she slid a folder in front of me. I've been thinking, she began. Maybe it's time you looked for something more stable. I opened the folder. Inside was a list of job openings, IT positions, tech support roles, project manager gigs, All safe, all painfully average. These are good jobs, Andrew. She said, we can't keep living like this forever. I looked at her, searching for the woman who once told me to chase my passion. But all I saw was someone who had stopped believing I wanted to scream, to tell her that I was on the verge of something huge. But I knew she wouldn't hear it. So I closed the folder, pushed it back toward her and said, thanks, but I'm exactly where I need to be. She sighed, one of those deep, disappointed sighs that said more than words ever could. Then she walked away. That night I worked even harder, not out of pride, out of necessity, because now it wasn't just about proving her wrong. It was about saving what little respect we had left in our marriage. But Megan wasn't done. A few days later, I noticed she'd been spending more time on her laptop, closing it quickly whenever I walked into the room. At first, I thought nothing of it, until I saw the email. She left her laptop open when she went to shower. I wasn't snooping, but there it was, clear as day. Interview confirmation, Thursday at 3 p.m. Curious, I clicked. It was from a recruiter. Megan had been applying for jobs in other cities, Chicago, New York, even San Francisco. My heart sank. She wasn't just losing faith in me, she was planning her escape route. I closed the laptop and sat there in silence. It wasn't betrayal in the traditional sense, but it hurt just the same. She was ready to uproot our lives because she didn't believe I had a future worth staying for. But again, I said nothing. No confrontation, no accusations. I wasn't going to beg her to believe in me. I was going to let my work speak for itself. The pressure was suffocating, but it sharpened my focus. Every setback in my code, every sleepless night, every doubt, I pushed through it all, because I knew when this deal closed, it wouldn't just be a win for my company. It would be a defining moment for me, for Megan, for everything we'd built together, or thought we had. By the end of that second week, my algorithm was done. I sent it off to the interested parties, scheduled the meetings, and waited. Meanwhile, Megan kept pretending everything was fine, cooking dinner, asking about my projects, all while lining up interviews behind my back. The silence between us grew louder with each passing day. And then, on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks after that family reunion, Megan came home early. Her face was pale, her hands shaking as she dropped her purse by the door. Andrew, we need to talk. I closed my laptop slowly, already knowing what was coming. My company, they're merging with a larger firm. There's going to be layoffs, a lot of them, and they're targeting marketing first, for the first time in a long while. Megan looked scared. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my expression calm, because what she didn't know was that I had just signed a deal that would flip our entire world upside down. And the company she was so terrified of, they weren't after her department, they were after me. I watched Megan pace back and forth in our living room, her voice trembling as she repeated the same sentence over and over. They're going to fire me, Andrew. I just know it. For years, she wore confidence like armor, always in control, always the one with the answers. But now she was unraveling. The CEO of the acquiring company singled out the marketing department during the announcement. She said, they're restructuring everything. I'm not safe. I could have ended her panic. Right then, I could have told her the truth, that the merger wasn't about cutting costs or downsizing teams. It was about acquiring my technology, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I offered a calm, let's wait and see how it plays out. She stared at me like I didn't understand the gravity of the situation. But I understood it better than anyone, because just 24 hours earlier, I had finalized a $440 million deal. A deal that made my little company the centerpiece of the merger. Megan was so terrified of, the acquiring firm didn't just want my algorithm. They wanted me on board as their chief innovation officer, a seat at the executive table. A position that would place me several levels above Megan in the corporate hierarchy. The irony was almost poetic. That night, Megan barely touched her dinner. She spent hours refreshing her email, waiting for updates from HR, her anxiety growing by the minute. I stayed quiet, letting the weight of her uncertainty settle in. Not out of malice, but because I knew this was bigger than a job scare. This was a moment of reckoning. The next morning it happened. I was in my home office when my phone rang, an unfamiliar number from the headquarters of the acquiring company. I answered, this is Andrew Collins. Mr. Collins, this is Daniel Shaw, CEO of Horizon Enterprises. I wanted to personally welcome you aboard and discuss next steps regarding the merger. I glanced toward the doorway. Megan was walking past, coffee in hand. As soon as she heard CEO and merger, she froze, her eyes locked onto mine, confusion quickly turning to shock. I put the call on speaker. Daniel continued. We're excited to have your expertise leading our innovation division. Also, given your unique position, we'd like your input on the upcoming departmental restructures, particularly marketing. Megan's face went pale. Her hands trembled, nearly spilling her coffee. Of course, I replied smoothly. I'll review the team structures and provide recommendations. By the time I ended the call, Megan was standing in the doorway, speechless. You're part of this, she finally managed. I leaned back in my chair, nodding, not just part of it. They acquired your company because of me. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The realization hit her like a freight train. All those nights she mocked my hobby, all those job listings she slid across the table, all the interviews she lined up behind my back, and now her career, her future was in the hands of the man she thought she was carrying. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The power dynamic that had quietly shifted over weeks now became undeniable. But I wasn't interested in revenge, not the petty kind. I wasn't going to humiliate her the way she had done to me. After a deep breath, I said, I've already made sure your position is secure. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Why? Why would you do that? I shrugged. Because I'm not here to destroy you. Megan, I just wanted you to see who I really am. I could see the guilt washing over her, every sarcastic comment, every dismissive glance playing back in her mind. But I wasn't done. There's one condition, I added. You'll be transferred to a different division. No special treatment, no conflicts of interest. She nodded slowly, unable to argue. How could she? This wasn't just a turning point in her career. It was the moment our marriage changed forever. Respect isn't something you demand. It's something you earn. And sometimes something you remind people of. After that conversation, Megan moved through the house like a ghost, quiet, distant, and visibly shaken. For years, she held the upper hand financially, emotionally, believing she was the anchor in our marriage while I floated aimlessly. Now everything had flipped, but I wasn't interested in rubbing it in. Real power doesn't need to shout, it speaks through actions. Calm, decisive, and undeniable. The next few days were a blur of executive meetings, strategy calls, and integration plans. I stepped into my new role as Chief Innovation Officer with confidence because this wasn't luck. This was 8 years of grinding while everyone else doubted me, including my wife. One of my first responsibilities was reviewing departmental structures, especially Megan's division. HR sent over a list of names, roles, and performance reviews. On paper, Megan was just another mid-level manager, competent but replaceable. I could have easily let the system take its course. With the restructuring, her position would have been one of the first on the chopping block. But that's not who I am. Instead, I scheduled a private call with HR, ensure Megan Collins retains a position. I instructed, but transfer her to the analytics division. Fresh start, no direct ties to marketing. The HR director hesitated for a moment, then agreed. Understood, Mr. Collins. We'll process the transfer discreetly. By the end of the week, Megan received her official notice. Her job was safe, but she'd be reporting to a new team in a different department. That evening, she approached me in the kitchen holding the letter. Her voice was soft, almost fragile. You didn't have to do this, Andrew. I looked at her, measured in my response. Yes, I did not, because I owed you, but because I know what it feels like to have someone believe in you, even when you don't deserve it. Her eyes dropped to the floor, guilt heavy in the air. For the first time, Megan didn't have a comeback. No sarcastic remarks, no defensive excuses. Just silence and reflection. Over the next few weeks, I watched her adjust to her new reality. At work, she was no longer the confident leader calling the shots. She was learning to navigate a different environment, humbled but determined. At home, things were quieter. She cooked more, asked genuine questions about my projects, real curiosity, not forced politeness. One night as we sat on the couch, she finally broke the silence that had lingered since the day everything changed. "I owe you an apology," she began. "Not just for what I said at the reunion, but for every time I doubted you." I didn't rush to respond. I let her words sit there because I needed to know she meant them. "I got so caught up in chasing security," she continued, "that I forgot what it means to truly support someone. You never stop believing in yourself, and I stopped believing in you." I nodded slowly, appreciating the honesty. "I didn't need you to carry me, Megan. I just needed you to stand beside me." She reached for my hand, tears welling in her eyes. "I see that now. It wasn't a perfect resolution. Nothing ever is. But it was a start. I didn't orchestrate some grand revenge. I didn't need to humiliate her or make her beg. The real victory was showing her and myself that quiet resilience speaks louder than any insult. That success when earned the hard way commands respect without demanding it. I'd built something lasting, not just a company, but a legacy, and Megan. She learned that strength isn't just about who brings home the bigger paycheck. It's about recognizing value even when it's not immediately visible. Our marriage wasn't the same as before, but maybe that was a good thing. Now it was built on something stronger than pride or ego. It was built on understanding and hard-earned respect. The official merger announcement went public on a Monday morning. Press releases, headlines, industry buzz. It was everywhere. Horizon Enterprises acquires Pinnacle Marketing in $440 million deal driven by breakthrough AI technology. My name was all over it. Interviews, articles, executive bios. By noon, my phone was flooded with messages, old colleagues, investors, even people who once brushed me off, now eager to reconnect. But the reaction I was most curious about was Megan's family. That evening, as Megan scrolled through her phone at the dinner table, I saw her jaw tighten. Notifications were pouring in, texts from her cousins, a call from her mother, even a group chat buzzing with links to the news. I knew exactly what they were reading. The same relatives who laughed at me weeks ago were now realizing that the hobbyist had just become one of the most influential executives in the industry. Megan didn't say much. She simply put her phone down and stared at her plate, the weight of embarrassment clear on her face. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. But life has a funny way of forcing people to confront their own mistakes. A few days later, Megan's parents invited us over for dinner, an attempt to catch up. I could sense Megan's hesitation, but we went anyway. The moment we walked through the door, her father greeted me with a firm handshake and a wide smile. "Andrew, we're so proud of you. Saw the news, what an achievement." Her mother chimed in, "We always knew you were onto something special." I almost laughed. Weeks ago, they were laughing at me. Now they were pretending they'd believed in me all along. I glanced at Megan, who avoided eye contact the entire evening. The pride her family showed me was a painful reminder of how little faith she'd had when it mattered most. After dinner, as we drove home in silence, Megan finally spoke. "I deserved that," she muttered every second of it. I kept my eyes on the road, letting her words linger. I never should have let their opinions shape how I treated you," she continued. "I got so caught up in appearances, I forgot who you really are." It wasn't easy for her to admit Megan had always been strong-willed, confident to a fault. But now she was facing the fallout, not just from her family's mockery, but from her own choices. At work, things had shifted too. While I kept my distance professionally, everyone knew who I was and who Megan was in relation to me. Whispers in the office halls, colleagues suddenly treating her differently, not out of fear, but out of curiosity. It wasn't easy being known as the woman who underestimated her husband's genius, but Megan handled it better than I expected. She kept her head down, focused on learning her new role in analytics, and never once asked for favors. One afternoon, I overheard two employees chatting near the elevator. "Did you hear Colin's wife works here too?" "Yeah, must be awkward after everything." I could have stepped in, made a statement to shut down the gossip, but Megan didn't want that. She told me plainly, "Let me face this, I need to." And I respected that, because real growth doesn't come from being shielded. It comes from owning your mistakes and rebuilding from them. Weeks turned into months, and slowly the tension at home began to ease. There were no grand gestures, no dramatic apologies beyond what had already been said, just quiet efforts, small moments where Megan showed she was trying to be better. One night as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, she turned to me and asked, "Do you ever wish you'd called me out that day at the reunion?" I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. No. Success says more than any argument ever could. She smiled a genuine, humble smile I hadn't seen in years. "I'm glad you didn't give up on me, even when I gave up on you. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. We still had work to do on ourselves and our marriage, but there was something stronger between us now. An understanding forged not through words but through actions and consequences. And as I looked at Megan that evening, I realized, sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's letting life teach the lesson for you." Looking back, I realized the hardest part wasn't building my company. It wasn't the sleepless nights, the financial strain, or even the years of doubt from outsiders. The hardest part was accepting that the person I loved most had stopped believing in me. But here's what life taught me. You don't chase validation, even from those closest to you. You stay true to your vision, even when it feels like you're standing alone. Megan and I, we survived this. But our marriage didn't come out the same. It came out stronger in some ways, weaker in others. Because once respect is fractured, it takes more than success to rebuild it. It takes humility. It takes time. I never threw her words back in her face. I never needed to. The silence, the shift in our dynamic said everything. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Support isn't about cheering when the rewards come in. It's about standing beside someone when all they have is a dream and the will to make it real. Megan learned that the hard way, and to her credit, she owned it. We still get invited to her family gatherings. Funny how the conversations changed. Now they ask me for career advice, the same people who once laughed behind my back. But I don't hold grudges because success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving yourself right. So if you're out there grinding, chasing something no one else can see, don't let their laughter shake you. Let it fuel you. Because one day when the dust settles and the results speak for themselves, you'll realize you never needed their approval. You just needed to believe in yourself long enough for the world to catch up, and trust me, when that day comes, the silence from those who doubted you will be louder than any applause.